So yeah, the floor is open.
So throughout your talk, you repeatedly say that like the experience is bonkers and nuts and everything.
Yeah. So I appreciate I use a lot of Northern English sort of colloquial terms. Does everyone know what I'm talking about? I say bonkers or yeah. Does it? Okay, good.
But and so clearly you're not trying to define or attribute like a certain interpretation of what's happening like as reality, but like did that evolve over time with your experience, like, or are you kind of fighting off like sides of you that take seriously some narratives, or have you come to truly just accept that you don't want to attribute like a fundamental meaning to it, or how do you view that?
No, well, so yeah, I certainly when I use the phrase bonkers or you know, there's a lot of words that get used around this like bonkers, insane, even things like awesome. I don't mean to trivialize it. Like I say, I think this is, when I say it is the most extraordinary experience, I believe this is a deeply meaningful experience. A lot of people kind of dismiss DMT because it is so rapid and sort of chaotic. They say, oh, there's nothing actually of value of here. I think, like I say, this has been a life-changing experience for me. So I'm certainly not sort of, you know, dismissing it as just some sort of like a random insanity. But the reason I use phrases like that is because it is so variable in what it is. And I have another video on my channel really going into this in some detail of when we talk about hyperspace, what is hyperspace? I can only really speak from my own experiences and from those I've talked to, but this is not one thing. If anything, when I really talk about hyperspace, I think of it is clearly there's a transition between you have your waking, your everyday experience, then you go through, you're having a very psychedelic experience, it escalates into this kind of breakthrough, and then you're in this kind of construct, and that construct, that is what I think of as hyperspace. And from there, it goes in all sorts of different directions. It can go into a very spiritual experience. You can have these feelings of talking to the divine. It can go into a very cosmic experience. Some of the kind of alien stuff can come in. It can be a very personal experience. I've had very sort of intimate sort of communications with like dead relatives and stuff like that. So this is why I kind of use the word bonkers. I don't think it's one thing. I don't think there's any kind of consistency here. I mean, sometimes it's just, it's just hilariously funny. So yeah, I don't mean for it to be dismissive, but there's just not many other words to say about it. It's kind of controlled chaos. It's awesome. It's bonkers. So.
Hi everyone, this is Future Rob in the Hyperspace editing room. As you can probably see in this video, I'm moving around quite a lot during this Q&A session, and often that means that I just walk out of the camera frame to go and engage with the person who's asking the question. But unfortunately, this means that sometimes the camera's just recording an empty space. Now, when this happens, rather than just you looking at an empty lecture room, I'll put in some trippy visuals on the screen to make it more watchable. And yeah, note to self, try and stand still for future events. Okay, let's get back to the video.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I was asking, like, if you have like any assumption like of like what is the thing, like is it all a projection of an inner experience that you become like kind of observant and that it is manifested? Like, is there something that is constantly there that you're accessing? I mean, not that I believe that there is like a clear answer, you know, but just like, yeah, doing the experience repeatedly over years, like maybe like what's your relationship to that and how it did it?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I flip-flop constantly on it, and I always kind of put in the disclaimer of I don't think it matters. Because I think with these experiences, because they have been so kind of like meaningful and life-changing to me, I don't care what the explanation is. It's kind of like if someone said it's just drugs on your brain, I'm fine with that. Someone says there literally are aliens beaming stuff into your head, I'm fine with that. Now, which of those do I kind of believe? This is probably a conversation for maybe later at the bar or something like that. But I would say I more or less believe that this is more of an inward journey, that this is what we're kind of experiencing here is aspects of ourselves, this kind of consciousness division that I'm talking about. These are, you know, probably I align closer to the sort of Jungian archetypal sort of that this is an inner journey. But I've had some experiences which have, sort of, something along the lines of, consciousness as a kind of, as a fundamental field of the universe, that, certainly tying into a lot of the kind of like Hindu ideas of that we are all the sort of the same being manifesting itself through. I'm not saying I believe this stuff, I'm just saying that's what I experienced, and I can't like just dismiss it out of hand. So I kind of go to the position of like, I don't give a fuck, it's just amazing, and just like I'm here, I'm a human being, I'm having this experience, I want to get the best out of this, so I'm just going to take it at kind of face value rather than try and, I don't think, maybe to sort of, I don't think it is completely understandable, and I don't think I want to understand it. I think just the isness of it is awesome.
I wonder if you could maybe comment on whether you had any kind of improved recollection of the trips day after day, because I oftentimes experience it being the case that when I have the most outlandish thus far trip, I almost in some respects don't even forget it, but cease being able to know it until I'm back in the trip again. And I'm like, oh my God, that's what's happened the last time. And then it seems to, with repeated trips over consecutive days, I seem to start recollecting the past trips more and coming out with a little bit more of a, not of an understanding, but of more of a precise sense of how insane it was, exactly. A bit more of the procession. So I wonder if, as the trips went day by day, you had more of a recollection at all that built up?
Yeah, I think I know what you're referring to. I've had it on a couple of different levels. So that there's certainly that. I mean, I think this is also quite a common thing that's reported, particularly with DMT. There is a feeling of familiarity about it. So as you kind of go back into it on separate days, not only do you have the familiarity of the space, but you have the familiarity of like, oh, now I remember why I was thinking in this kind of way, and it kind of comes back to you. So yeah, there is a kind of a feeling of sequence, I would say, to these experiences, and also that kind of understanding, or the perception of understanding seems to come back online. But yeah, I would say, I mean, there's just another element to that, is that with that familiarity thing, it's very strange how familiar it is. I remember the very first time I did DMT and ended up in that space, it seemed to me so obvious that this is what would happen. It was like, of course, it's this place. I recognize this place intimately. Not only did I recognize the place, I recognized the headspace. I recognized the kind of that way, that mode of thinking. And so, yeah, as you did it sequentially, then yeah, you kind of, whether it's real or whether it's an illusion, it did feel like there was some, it was like a doorway into a narrative, like there was a narrative was building up over time. Like you heard in the kind of story, things were like certain features of were becoming persistent throughout the experience.
I was wondering about your use over time, I guess. So I'll try to get the question to you, and you tell me. But you're used to hyperspace, so maybe you'll understand what I'm saying anyway. My question is: do you, over time, were you more in your increased familiarity with the space? Were you able to like reap the lessons or understand what was happening with any increased sense of comfort, or like, again, familiarity, that where you could take those lessons or take those insights and apply them to life, or when you're entering back into that space, enter with less fear or a greater sense of awe or openness, such that it kind of led to an exponential ability to kind of gain insight from that space? Does that question make sense?
I think so, yeah. If I'm being honest, no. I think this is, I would say this is where I think there's a huge gulf between the vaped DMT experience and something like ayahuasca, which I think experientially are very different. So the weird thing is with the vaped DMT experience, then you get these kind of instant gains without necessarily, well, I can only speak for myself really. I get these kind of instant gains without necessarily knowing how it's happened, or like so the anxiety situation I just mentioned, it just happened to me. I also had the experience of, I just drastically, suddenly my craving for alcohol had fell away. I still drink, but it just plummeted. My craving for a lot of junk food just plummeted. Now, there wasn't a narrative or a lesson that I could tell you happened. It's like it came for free. That feels a bit cheap to say that, but that's how it happened. Whereas with the ayahuasca experiences, yeah, these things get dragged out of you in sort of, painful vomiting and purging. And so you really get an understanding of why, and you kind of think, yeah, I don't want to treat my body like shit anymore. I don't want to fill it up with junk food. And so you get this much more complete picture, which I think is probably very helpful because it's rewiring you. But the DMT, the vape DMT part, it like I say, it seems to come for free, and it feels, I must say, it's been fairly permanent. So I didn't feel like I wasn't craving, it wasn't like a New Year's resolution. It was like, oh God, I really want to have a drink, I really want to eat all this ice cream, I wish if only the DMT hadn't. So it was just like, no, I'm good tonight, actually, So yeah, that sounds kind of like unfulfilling or cheap, but that's how it was.
So in terms of a therapeutic, if you're using DMT as a therapeutic intervention for something, even if there's no goal or a New Year's resolution, as you put it, would you distinguish between an IV or using it in conjunction with MAOI or any of these kind of specific interventions, or it really is kind of just a snapshot of experience that doesn't build on itself or doesn't require an increased level of time or attention or skill building in non-hyperspace? Do these kind of, you know what I mean? Are there avenues which you think would be more, I guess, efficacious in therapeutic sense?
Well, I can't speak for the IV route because I've never done that, and there's certainly some very interesting stuff going on around the extended state DMT, the stuff that Andrew Gallimore talks about. We've got a video with him. So yeah, I think at that point that we could then see DMT being used in something similar to the sort of psilocybin or LSD models. In terms of what I'm kind of describing here, and would I sort of recommend that to somebody and say, hey, if you're trying to accomplish quitting smoking or improving your diet, I honestly couldn't, because it doesn't feel like, particularly the sort of the 5-minute experience, it is so bonkers that it's not really particularly steerable. It's just this kind of uncontrolled sort of chaos. And again, things just seem to happen for free within that. But it's hard to say that that's a good thing or it's a consistent thing. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I think if for someone who's really targeting something they want to work on, for me personally, and the sorts of things that I've wanted to work on, I've had a lot of issues dealing with grief. My mother committed suicide, and that's been something I've really struggled to sort of come to terms with. For me, that's where something like ayahuasca has been much more helpful, because it is this much more personal experience. You do feel like you're navigating it. It feels like it's not just random gestures, entities, blah, 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 and then you come out of it like, holy shit, I don't want to smoke anymore. It's more like it feels that you are rewriting the narrative of what's going on. So the way I kind of think of it is if you're looking for healing, and we could sort of get into what is healing and stuff. If you're looking for healing, I would recommend mushrooms, ayahuasca, perhaps LSD, although not necessarily for me. But if you're looking for what I'd say consciousness exploration and sort of really, wanting to have just an absolutely awesome experience. And that sounds like I'm belittling it, but there is something incredibly spiritual and fulfilling about having an awesome experience. It's, you know, our lives are shitty enough and mundane enough to have something where you're just filled with awe and wonder is a godsend. So yeah, I think for the more psychonaut activities, DMT in all its kind of shape or forms, but yeah, apart from ayahuasca, which say much more lends itself to this healing sort of thing.
I came with a question of a friend. Do you think pure curiosity is well enough reason to try DMT?
Yeah. No. It's a thought which occurred to me in sort of doing this. The idea that I could have died and not had one of these experiences seems to me as just abhorrent as the idea that, you know, someone could die without ever having had an orgasm. Even though these experiences are completely out there, sci-fi, wondrous, astonishing, they do feel intrinsically human. There is something about this that is part of our it's our human experience, no matter how we're getting there, whether we're getting there via DMT, some other plant, meditation, breath work. There is something about this psychedelic experience that is, I think, is our birthright. And the idea that I could have just spent my life and not had it, I think it is horrifying to me. Sorry, what was the question? Pure curiosity, yeah, and I think that is just, you know, whether you're just coming at it because you want to know, or that you feel there's something more. Well, yeah, why not? I don't think you have to necessarily looking to be, and you know, as some enlightened being. I'm certainly not. So yeah, I think curiosity is a valid reason.
Why do you not like LSD?
Oh no, it's not. I do like LSD. I like LSD a lot. Let me explain. What I was saying is that for me, LSD is not something I would put in that healing category. I would put it more in the recreational, but I know that some people do. So that's why I say LSD not for me. It's not that I dismiss. LSD was the first psychedelic I tried. I've tried it a lot since then. So yeah, I'm not dissing LSD at all. I think it's an incredible experience. It's just not, I don't think of it in the same kind of healing bucket for me personally.
I actually had a question. It was, what has been like your main shifts, let's say in perspective, from before and after experience, like in your life? And also if you have like a new, like let's say, like a new way of living life day to day. Like, do you have like a new relationship with it? Like a sort of ego death, or I don't know, maybe a way of less fearful, less trying to control everything in that sort of sense?
Yeah, good, great question. My very sort of first dips into DMT world, which is when I talk about it being life-changing, then yeah, absolutely. I was, at the time when I sort of really discovered it, I was in pretty bad shape. I was having crippling anxiety at the time. I mean, serious, I was in like panic attacks, just dropping in the streets. I had no idea what was wrong with me. I've also got epilepsy, and the two things were kind of feeding into each other, where the panic would make me think I was about to have a seizure. And I was just completely convinced I was going to die. I had friends who had epilepsy. Some of them passed away when I was a teenager. I was absolutely convinced that I was going to die, that my kids were going to grow up without a father. And I was struggling to leave the house. And seriously, doing this would have been impossible. And then it was kind of, we got the idea to do some get some DMT. And this was, what are we talking, 10 years ago now? Yeah, 2015. So just after we'd moved to Switzerland. And yeah, I think it was somewhere around like like I mentioned, it's a very tricky substance to get right. But once we got it right, it was incredible. Within the space of this 10-minute trip, I had completely resolved this fear of death. It was like that, and like I said, I do not like this kind of like, it's a magic bullet, it solves everything. I don't think that's true, but it solved that for me because I had a very clear experience which just spoke to me in a very rational way about this anxiety. And it was like, Rob, look, dude, you're coming through that door and you're going to go out through that door. That's what happens to everyone. It's okay. That just sounds, I mean, that might sound really trite and just like nonsensical, but to me, that was the most meaningful thing I'd ever heard. Like, right, of course, death is something that happens. This is not a pathology. It's just part of life. Are you going to fuck your life up by living in fear of it? So I came out of this experience and I was like, it was gone. Like the anxiety was gone. So then I thought, well, if that can happen within a 10-minute experience, like what else is going on in here? And that's what kind of led to a lot of my travels in South America, because I also, with this MAOI stuff, because I wanted to explore this space, like I figured there's something magical in here.
So my experience with other psychedelic is that if you take them often, it kind of changes your sober state, like HPPD and stuff like that, Did you have a similar experience with taking DMT frequently?
No, it was actually pretty good to me until, like I say, that last experience, kind of like, that seemed to be like the experience telling me, okay, you've done now, dude, this is time to draw a line. But no, throughout, there wasn't any kind of unwanted sort of effects, any kind of hangover. I didn't sort of notice anything, like I say, unwanted, unpleasant. It just kind of fitted in pretty seamlessly into my life, because throughout this kind of this period, I was doing my normal sort of, I was going to work, I was sort of making dinner for my kids and stuff. So yeah, I didn't notice anything. My wife is here. She might have a different opinion. Like maybe I was like going completely batshit insane at the time, but I think, do you want to comment?
No, you were quite fine.
There you go. But yeah, I have, certainly, I don't want to sort of say that that doesn't happen. I have heard people come up, say things that subsequent consecutive doses has had a sort of effect on, even to a point where not necessarily that they were exhibiting side effects, but that they felt that the experience itself was kind of rejecting them. There's a phrase within the psychedelic community being hyper-slapped, sort of just being sort of told, no, go away, you've had enough. That was also one of the things I was kind of almost kind of trying to investigate here, to see if there was a point of, if that would happen to me, why that might happen to me. Why is it not happening to these sort of traditional folks? Is it because they are following more of a sort of, traditional, lineage with it? But no, I can't say I noticed anything particularly bad.
So maybe on the flip side, like, have you had any like kind of traumatic or like very difficult experience with DMT, where maybe you had required some help for? And second part that I will make short is in people that that took DMT, or in general, are there some like personal characteristics in personality or history or whatever that make it that you have more probability of having a bad time or like a difficult experience with DMT in particular?
With vape DMT, I personally have not had just an outright bad experience. They've all been pretty awesome. With ayahuasca, different story, and I would say that's almost expected. If I'm drinking ayahuasca, then yeah, I'm going there to work on problems, so I kind of expect the demons to come up from the depths of my soul, and they certainly do. Now, I've certainly seen people have very bad reactions on DMT. So I've seen people have not only bad reactions, but reactions in ways I found quite astonishing, because they're having reactions where they weren't seeing all the fractals and visuals and all that kind of stuff. They were pretty much having like a psychotic break, where they were convinced that like the police were at the door and they were being taken to prison and stuff like this. So what What I could say is that, yeah, that person, when they were doing that, they weren't in the best sort of setting. They were going through a divorce and stuff like that at the time. There was all sorts of personal stuff going on. So I don't think it was a good idea for them to do it at the time. So that, really, I would just say that's the only thing. If you are in a space where there is just shit going on with you, like, I would not recommend doing DMT in some sort of moment of crisis. If you've got stuff going on, I don't think this is the thing that's going to perk you up. I'll put it that way. So I think you have to be pretty stable emotionally, psychologically before going there. Otherwise, I think it will start. You'll start manifesting a kind of like a bad experience.
So when did you do your experiment, and were there days where you didn't really feel like doing it, but you kind of forced yourself to commit to the experiment? For example, you were sleep deprived and you didn't really want to do it?
Yeah, so it was December through to December 2021 through to sort of New Year 2022. Were the times when I didn't want to do it? Absolutely. Yeah, particularly with some of the sort of the light. When I was doing the smaller doses, then those I approached with a lot more curiosity. But yeah, some of the larger doses are like, God, why am I doing this? And then, like I say, when it came to the MEOI dose at the end, I thought I'd completely fucked it. So yeah, I mean, to be honest, every single time I approach DMT for a kind of breakthrough dose, I'm always thinking, like, what am I doing here? Like, dude, are you know, and even though I know before I might be like, yes, gonna do this tonight, this is gonna be all, as soon as it's there in my hand and like, it's like, yeah, that anxiety, that pre-flight jitters never goes away. For me, same if I'm drinking ayahuasca, like I'm like, yes, can't wait to go into the jungle, gonna hang it with all my friends. Get there, the shaman calls me in, I'm like, fucking hell, Rob, what are you doing? Like, your ego just got totally carried away with you. You're going to make a video about being in the Amazon. Like, so, yeah, it doesn't go away, but yeah, I'll just say it never, the anxiety part never really goes away.
Thank you very much again, Rob.
Thank you all for coming. It's been a